If you thought that melatonin only is required for us to sleep, there are some surprising and shocking facts that you learn throughout the podcast, and this is useful for everyone. Did you know that majority of the melatonin, 400 times more melatonin, is made in our gut? And this melatonin is not just a sleep hormone, it has so many other functions in our body. And then 2 to 3 hours later, some people feel sleepy after eating a heavy meal. So that is because melatonin levels are actually rising at that time. Melatonin was given to children and it was used as an experimental therapy for COVID-19 patients because of brain fog. So it has this anti-aging effect, and that is exactly what we need in the oocyte quality in reproductive health. So this is an amazing function of melatonin. The interesting part about this is melatonin supplementation does not cause habit formation. When you are not getting your beauty sleep, you are aging faster. If you thought sleep was optional, think again. Remember beauty sleep and what it can do to your health. How about aging faster? Is it something that you would like to see? How far would you go for anti-aging? Anti-wrinkle creams? Anti-aging pills? How about some good night's sleep? Do you want to know the secrets? Stay tuned for the entire podcast. Do watch till the very end. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this super exciting episode 4 of the neurotransmitter series. So, today we are going to focus on our sleep hormone, melatonin. If you thought that melatonin only is required for us to sleep, there are some surprising and shocking facts that you learn throughout the podcast, and this is useful for everyone. Stay tuned and watch till the very end. I have here our co-host Sujata Gokhale. Welcome, Sujata.
Hi, Rashmi. Thank you for that introduction and welcome, viewers, to our series of podcasts on neurotransmitters. If you have missed out on the earlier episodes, please find the links in the description given below. In previous podcasts, we have discussed on how the gut microbiota plays a crucial role in maintaining overall mental and physical wellness. An imbalance of the gut microbial community has been linked to various illnesses. So, mental wellness has been closely associated with the production of the neurotransmitters in our gut, also fondly referred to as the second brain. We talked about serotonin and how it is interconnected to the production of our sleep hormone, the melatonin. Melatonin is produced in the gastrointestinal tract and has local and systemic effects and is closely connected to the intestinal microbiota. The connection between melatonin and brain related disorders or neurodegenerative disorders suggests that the gut brain axis plays a pivotal role in our mental wellness. So, Rashmi, it's surprising how something in our gut can influence our sleep and overall health. Can you explain exactly how melatonin plays a role in our well being?
Yes, so these are some very interesting questions. And as you mentioned rightly, when we think of melatonin, what is the first thing that comes to everybody's mind? That it is our sleep hormone. I'm sure everybody knows that it is the sleep hormone. It is very important to get us to that stage of falling asleep. It is important for our body clock or the circadian rhythm. So the way it works is melatonin is produced in our pineal gland in the brain, and the stimulus is sunlight. So when there is sunlight, melatonin levels are extremely low in the brain and we are awake. But when there is sunset, so when the light levels are going down, I'm not talking about artificial light, the natural light. So what happens is that actually causes our cells to go into and start making melatonin. So we mentioned this previously, that melatonin is made from serotonin, and that causes us to go into that state of feeling sleepy, and then levels of melatonin are highest at night and we fall asleep. We go into the different stages of sleep. But did you know that majority of the melatonin, 400 times more melatonin, is made in our gut? So that is the
That's
shocking fact, that people don't know this, that yes, brain melatonin is something that most people are familiar with, but 400 times more melatonin in our gut, that is made by the gut microbiome, and this melatonin is entering our bloodstream. So it is going all throughout our body. Melatonin is also synthesized by a lot of other organs, by the way, but the majority synthesis happens in the gut by the gut microbiome. Just like serotonin is made by the gut microbiome, serotonin is converted further into melatonin. And this melatonin is not just a sleep hormone, it has so many other functions in our body. It does an amazing job at scavenging free radicals. So, what do radicals do? They cause aging. When melatonin is able to remove these free radicals, aging is slowed down. So people who have good enough levels of melatonin age normally or age at a slower rate. So that is a very important function. Melatonin is also anti-inflammatory. It reduces the synthesis of inflammatory cytokines, the pro-inflammatory cytokines, so called. So that really helps control inflammation. And you know what happens when inflammation is controlled. There are so many chronic diseases that are prevented when inflammation is controlled in our body. It is extremely important what melatonin is doing in this direction. And if we think about many other functions, like we said last time, that melatonin controls the flow of food in our intestine. So serotonin speeds it up, melatonin slows it down. Melatonin is actually made in our gut from the food that we eat in 2 to 3 hours, because everything needs to be converted. Tryptophan needs to be converted to serotonin, that needs to be converted to melatonin. All of this takes a long time. And then 2 to 3 hours later, some people feel sleepy after eating a heavy meal. So that
Yes.
is because melatonin levels are actually rising at that time. When the food is digested, when melatonin is made from that food, we start feeling sleepy. It doesn't happen too much in children, but it does happen to adults who eat food that is very probably rich in tryptophan. So even during the daytime, people tend to feel sleepy after a heavy meal. And then what that does, when melatonin is high in our gut, it slows down how food passes through the gut. So once the food is digested, we are not ready to eat. There is a time difference that we need to have between meals. And this regulation happens by a delicate play of serotonin and melatonin, like we mentioned in the previous podcast. So the beauty of it is when melatonin is slowing down the passage of food, it is something that we need to consider. We cannot eat every hour or every 2 hours, because there is a process that is happening in our body. As we say, there should be a gap of 4 hours or even more between meals. That is because of our hormones being regulated, and the hormones regulating our digestion in this intricate, beautiful manner. So this is one of the things that, and there are many other functions. Of course, it plays a very important role in our mental health, in our cognition. As you rightly mentioned, there are neurodegenerative disorders that are linked to lower levels of melatonin. So that is a very important function. There's an additional function that I want to mention later on, but
Yes,
before
yes.
that, I'm sure you want
I'll
to say
come to
something.
that. Yeah, I'll come to that. So that was an eye opener, Rashmi, because we can really understand why melatonin is known as the sleep hormone. Because if we need to keep our sanity, we need that sleep, which I can relate to, a couple of days of deprivation of sleep while probably we are, working on something, and we know how it affects us, the brain fog that follows, the kind of cloudy thoughts, the decision making, everything is impacted because of that kind of sleep deprivation. So melatonin, missing out on good sleep for a couple of days also changes a lot of things in us. And but imagine if that is not being produced continuously in our body. So then how the person or the people who are undergoing through that kind of a imbalance in melatonin are going to really face the various issues and how it could impact them on the long run, in the long run. So Rashmi, can you elaborate to our viewers how the microbiome actually manufactures melatonin using tryptophan from food? By the way, I think we discussed that tryptophan is also required for developing serotonin in our last podcast, and it's like you mentioned that it is also produced in the pineal glands and in the gut. So contrasting the two, what do you think is more, I mean, which is the, like you said, 400 times in the gut. So it is really going to be the largest producer of melatonin for us as a, for our body. So what do you have to say about that kind of a melatonin production in our gut? And what other factors affect the production of the melatonin in our gut besides the diet?
Yes, so that's a very important question. When you talk about melatonin being made in the gut, it's a different process that is going through the gut microbiome. The brain is
Yes.
completely a different mechanism. But in our gut, the gut microbiome, actually, the germs in our gut are pushing our enterochromaffin cells to make serotonin. Tryptophan is converted by our own intestinal cells, but there is a rate limiting step. There's an enzyme that we don't have in enough quantities. So that enzyme is supplied by the gut microbiome. So you can very well say that they are making this serotonin from it. And then
Yes.
there are other enzymes that are required for conversion to melatonin. One of them is ANAT. So ANAT also, there can be a rate limiting step, and the gut microbiome is helping push that to make enough levels of melatonin. Now, if you think 400 times that made in the brain, and this is going everywhere in the circulation, it is going to all the organs. So it is definitely doing something other than just functioning on sleep. So one very interesting thing that I saw in one of the publications is the impact of melatonin on COVID-19 patients, because you mentioned brain fog. Melatonin
Yes.
was given to children and it was used as an experimental therapy for COVID-19 patients because of brain fog, because of a disruption in the gut microbiome. So, in these trials, there were symptoms that were much milder in COVID-19 patients as compared to the ones that were not given melatonin. So, another interesting aspect about melatonin is that not only does the gut microbiome help make melatonin, melatonin has an effect on improving the gut microbiome as well. So, it's a virtuous cycle, we can say that even good when melatonin levels are high enough in our body, it ensures that the gut microbiome is in a healthy state. So they are both actually interacting with each other and helping improve the quality of each other. So that is a very interesting aspect that we can see
Yes. Very
about the gut
amazing
microbiome.
information, Rashmi, there. Now we discussed about, the effects of low
Yes. So
melatonin
people who have
production.
dysbiosis or a
Yes.
disrupted gut microbiome tend to have lower levels of melatonin because there's no way they will have the good enough germs to be able to make melatonin
Yes.
from it.
Yes.
So
Yes.
this is how it works in a cyclic manner.
So you mentioned now about the how the low melatonin production happens and how it leads to various different kind of effects, especially how they corrected it using melatonin in COVID patients for clearing of the brain fog or the symptoms of brain fog. So and brain fog and sleep disorders. But I would like to mention an article I recently read, on the connect between melatonin and reproductive disorders. Is it true that melatonin
That's
production
an
can
amazing
actually
connection. So
impact
yes, I was
the
waiting to
female
mention on that. Yes, that is
reproductive system? Yes.
unbelievable that the melatonin just is not a sleep hormone. It is impacting the quality of the oocytes, the number of oocytes, how they mature, how they are
Yes.
fertilized, and even how the embryo develops. So if we think about that, this is just mind blowing that people who are going through artificial reproductive technologies, ART, IVF, IUI, or even otherwise, people who are suffering from any kind of fertility issues, even if they don't have to go for these extreme kind of treatments, just melatonin supplementation, if their melatonin levels are low, can help improve the number of oocytes, the quality of oocytes, how they are maturing, the outcome of these procedures. And this is something that has been done. There are clinical trials that have been done. But having said that, I have not found this to be a common supplement given to people who are going through any of these procedures. So I really wonder why. If it is improving, because if you think of what melatonin is doing, it is reducing oxidative stress, it is doing this scavenging of free radicals. So it has
Yes.
this anti-aging effect. And that is exactly what we need in the oocyte quality in reproductive
Right.
health. So this is
Right.
an amazing function of melatonin, and I just have no idea why it is not used mainstream. Because if you think of the outcome and how what is the percentage likelihood of it converting to a successful pregnancy, then it is an easy supplement to provide or to do something to improve melatonin levels. So the function on reproductive health, many different studies have focused on just the quality of oocytes, how the number of oocytes have increased after supplement after giving melatonin or improved melatonin secretion, and how the fertilization rates have improved, how the embryo quality has improved. So all of the parameters that are required for any of these processes can be improved by melatonin. So that is
Wow,
an
Satya.
amazing, and
Yes,
nobody knows about
very,
it. This
very
is not a function that
surprising.
is, yeah, this is not a function that people know of.
Yes, nobody has. I mean, actually, there are papers, there are information on melatonin affecting it, but we haven't taken it, the clinical.
Yes, so if anybody is
This,
having fertility
I think
issues,
we
I would
should.
definitely urge them to ask their
Yes,
doctor about
yes.
just improving their melatonin levels, just improving the quality of their sleep, just improving the amount of melatonin that is produced in their body. Maybe it could change the outcome of their fertility treatments.
Great, great there. So, besides the reproductive system, melatonin is also known to impact the gastrointestinal system. Just look at the various aspects that are slowly unfolding here, Rashmi. We just thought that melatonin was a sleep hormone, wasn't it? But it shows its impacts on the reproductive health. Then we also see that it impacts the gastrointestinal system. And of course, we talked about neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and multiple sclerosis, autoimmune there. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so if we look at digestive health in itself, when we talk about the passage of food through our digestive tract and its regulation by serotonin and, of course, by melatonin. So, when melatonin is going to slow it down, it is going to prevent us from eating at weird hours when we should not. There should be a gap between food. And when that does not happen, when people have low levels of melatonin, then it is going to really impact with how the digestion is happening, how food is, it's not slowed down, people can eat at any weird time. So it is linked to many digestive disorders like irritable bowel syndrome, like inflammatory bowel disease. And we see that neurotransmitters are pretty much disturbed. It's not just melatonin, we can talk about many other neurotransmitters that are totally disrupted in these disorders. So these disorders are not just of sleep, these are not just of digestive tract, these are things are happening throughout the body. So that is something that melatonin is definitely doing. And again, studies have shown supplementation of melatonin or improving melatonin levels can improve the symptoms of these gastrointestinal disorders. The other thing that you mentioned about the neurodegenerative disorders, now this is again for people who have low levels of melatonin, it is found that it can progress to something very different. Now the way this occurs is that when there is dysbiosis, when there is a disturbed biological system, that is the gut microbiome is very poor quality, what happens is even when there is tryptophan, so we would think that, oh, we are eating tryptophan rich foods, it should be converted to melatonin. But if the gut microbiome is just not there to convert it, what happens is the
Yes.
tryptophan is diverted to something else.
Hmm.
It
Okay.
is diverted to something called a kynurenine pathway. It is not diverted to serotonin or melatonin. So the happiness hormone is gone, the melatonin is gone, tryptophan is diverted into something else. And you know what happens here? People will have low serotonin and melatonin levels, but what is that
Okay.
tryptophan doing on the other side? When it is going through that kynurenine pathway, it is making inflammatory molecules that are causing neuroinflammation, that are traveling along the vagus nerve, that are going to the brain, crossing the blood brain barrier, and they are traveling along the vagus nerve, causing inflammation in the brain. So this is how you see that melatonin levels are not there, and there are
Wow.
additional inflammatory molecules now to that are going to cause inflammation in the brain. This inflammatory molecules is how is going to cause multiple sclerosis, it is going to cause Parkinson's disease, it is going to cause Alzheimer's disease. Although the pathways of these three diseases are different, the mechanism is basically this dysbiosis causing. Of course, that's not the only factor, there are many other neurotransmitters and many other things that are playing a role, but this is a major factor. that the protective function we normally see from melatonin, that it is anti-inflammatory. It is trying to protect us from this inflammation. Now, instead of that happening, we are getting inflammation in the brain because of a poor quality of the microbiome. And then again, the second thing is that there might not be enough tryptophan in the diet, which
Okay.
again causes low levels of melatonin. So there
So
are,
it kind of becomes a toxic cycle then when, though the tryptophan is being produced, it
so
is
when
not being
tryptophan is
used.
not enough,
Yeah.
melatonin is not enough. You might not have that many anti-inflammatory, inflammatory molecules going in your brain, because that also needs tryptophan. But melatonin is also not there to protect. But if there's a dysbiotic gut, if there's a poor quality microbiome, then the chances of any of these diseases actually manifesting are much higher, because
Yes.
inflammation itself is very high.
Wow. I mean, really amazing because what we thought of as simple as going and going to bed and having a good night's sleep doesn't actually end up, happening that way. But it could happen that we do not process the necessary tryptophan foods into getting good quality, good melatonin amounts of melatonin, and then we might land up with kinds of diseases like Alzheimer's, multiple sclerosis, or Parkinson's. So we are already beginning to see the connect to disorders such as Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. Now, when you say that they are having a lower level of melatonin, you have also been talking about giving melatonin supplements to as therapeutic measures in such patients. Not only these, you talked about those with IBS as well as for fertility patients. Patients who are not able to have the kids or undergoing fertility treatments. Now, will these supplements cause any side effects? Because in our last podcast, we talked about higher levels of serotonin. You remember that? And so, will that have an impact on our with the use of melatonin supplements?
So the answer to this is very different from the previous one. This is very interesting, and I'm glad you asked this, because serotonin supplementation actually has serious side effects. So
Yes.
that is not something that can be recommended very commonly, or it's not something that people should just go and take on their own. However, having said that, melatonin is completely different. Melatonin supplements have been around for a very long time, and it is something that people take for those who are doing shift duties or who are frequent flyers. It's quite common for them to reset their body clock, not take it regularly, but just reset their body clock using melatonin supplementations for a few days or a month. So that's what people correlate that to, that yes, melatonin is going to help us reset our body clock. But if we look at the studies that have been done on melatonin, there are not enough, there's not enough evidence of any kind of serious side effects with melatonin supplementation when it is taken for a month or short periods of time. So there are very rare side effects like sleepiness during the day, feeling drowsy, and feeling of nausea or some kind of restlessness. But it's not very severe and it's very rare. The interesting part about this is melatonin supplementation does not cause habit formation. So people can
Yes.
actually stop melatonin and their body again is going to start producing it. So just like
Yes.
what I said for serotonin is not at all true for melatonin. That is an interesting part. And I'm very surprised that if you look at any of the clinical trials that involved IBS, IBD, any of the reproductive health with assisted reproductive technologies where melatonin supplementation was given, and all of the qualities of things that I told about, the outcome was improved. Then, if we talk about multiple sclerosis, if we talk about Parkinson disease, so in Parkinson's patients, these clinical trials have shown melatonin supplementation to actually increase the number of dendrites in the brain. So it is going to reverse the symptoms, some of the symptoms of Parkinson's disease. The similar things have been seen in Alzheimer's patients. Similar things have been seen in multiple sclerosis patients. So when there are clinical trials showing all of these very positive effects, and when you know that melatonin supplements are not habit forming, when we know that there are not enough side effects of it to not avail of it, in such serious disorders, I really wonder why it's not mainstream form of treatment. Seriously, I really
Yes.
wonder why it's not a mainstream, because if it is going to improve the quality of life, it is going to reverse some of the symptoms, it is going to improve the outcome of reproductive technologies, it is going to reverse the symptoms of IBS or IBD, why wouldn't anybody prescribe it is beyond me.
Yes, I mean, it's a something that we need to give thought about, because why is it not being used by the clinicians to help improve all these conditions? And though they are seeing that the clinical trials have given us good results, we should really give a thought about using these as mainstream medicine. Yes. So
Because
thank
all
you.
of these are not
Yes.
these are not something that can be treated very easily. There is no
Yes.
such treatment available for majority of these. So
Yes.
trying something as harmless as melatonin, or at least trying to improve it naturally, is something that I would definitely recommend.
Right, right, right. So we need to have a look into more papers on that, I think, or maybe we should, have more discussions on how we can melatonin can really impact on these patients, and knowing that they don't have the kind of habit forming or side effects that we are looking at.
So the gut microbiome is extremely important. One example I want to give here is that what happens when it is disrupted. I talked about the dysbiotic gut microbiome. Did you know that in case of infections like Helicobacter pylori, so some people test positive for Helicobacter. What
Yes,
does that
yes.
even mean? So it doesn't just destroy our digestion, it doesn't just cause acid reflux, it doesn't just increase our risk of having gastric ulcers and cancers, it also reduces the levels of melatonin. And you know what happens when there are low levels of melatonin, it is going to
Yes.
cause all of the other things. So when this infection is treated, when antibiotics are given to treat this infection, melatonin levels come back to normal. So that is something very amazing, how easily it can reset itself when the microbiome is fixed.
So, Rashmi, we are knowing this melatonin as the sleep hormone. So, if in case the sleep hormone is not there or it's impacted, so if we are sleep deprived, how does it impact us, or only does it only impact adults, or even impacts children?
Sleep deprivation is extremely common, and people think that sleep is optional. Children go to sleep so late now. Children need, even teenagers need at least 10 hours of sleep, 9 to 11 hours of sleep. How many children are getting that much sleep these days? Because they are on their digital devices, and because of advances in technology, children are given laptops or iPads or digital devices even at school, so they are working on their digital devices throughout the day, and then looking at their cell phones still they go to sleep. That is something that is disrupting the circadian rhythm completely. It's not just disrupting the melatonin in the brain, but also the gut microbiome, also how melatonin functions in the gut. So if we talk about what happens in sleep deprivation, adults who are not working shift duties are also sleep deprived. I don't know of anybody who is saying that, oh, I'm getting a good enough sleep nowadays. And what happens? We need sleep to repair our body, to organize our memory. And there's a step of washing inside the brain. I talked about that previously, that there's a step where the brain cells are actually washed during the night. All of that happens when we sleep. So when melatonin levels are low, there is going to be sleep deprivation, our memory is not going to be processed properly, and then this is just the effect of sleep deprivation, but aging is going to accelerate. So if we don't get our beauty sleep, it is going to accelerate aging, it is going to
Yes.
accelerate inflammation, it is going to accelerate the onset of chronic diseases which we are seeing in children, in adults. So this is one very important factor. When you are not getting your beauty sleep, you are aging faster.
Yes, I think each of our cells require that rest to rejuvenate for the next day, for the coming upcoming day. But it's not just a common thought or a saying when we say beauty sleep. We do require that, and especially children now. How many of us have seen them, underperforming in school because they've had a late night, they come and they have not eaten well, so everything gets upset because of that, circadian rhythm
The
being
digestion
lost.
doesn't happen properly again because of
Yes.
low melatonin
So,
levels.
so then, and then insomnia patients. Yeah, I mean, what starts as late night work slowly, develops into having no sleep at all. And that can be really, really harmful over a period of time. So yes, that is very, very important, though called beauty sleep, in a very funny way, or light way. But I think we all should look
That
forward
is
to
the
it.
truth.
So yes, melatonin is our sleep hormone, but besides the sleep hormone, it does a lot of things that we never knew about. So thank you, Rashmi, for that very informative explanation on the importance of melatonin. And viewers, if you're looking at boosting your melatonin, besides taking the supplements, there are 6 ways you can easily do it. Eat melatonin rich foods. That could be anything like nuts, cherries, strawberries, banana, grapes, capsicums, asparagus, mushrooms, fish, egg. Eat tryptophan rich foods such as fiber rich foods, legumes, etc. Eat foods rich in vitamin B6 such as beans. Follow the circadian rhythm. Stop using digital devices like mobiles and TV while sleeping, and try a hot bath and sleep meditation before going to sleep. So get that good night's sleep and see what wonders it does to you. See
So,
you
if,
in the
yeah,
next
you
episode.
mentioned about all of the very easy ways of getting melatonin naturally, because that is the way to get melatonin. Getting a good night's sleep, of course, is very, very important. Getting enough sunlight to
Yes,
get our circadian rhythm in order.
in
And
order.
yes,
So yes, very, very important, well, a small little hormone that puts us to sleep. Thank you, Rashmi. Thank you for this wonderful insight. And see you again on the next podcast that will be coming very soon. Yes.
yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sujata.